There's only a few organizations that I know of that are really doing good work on the Congo, and they need to be supported. But I think what has to happen is that somehow, maybe this is one of my answers to the problem that I would give you, is that somehow you've got to get other churches in America of all denominations to stand up for Congo and what's true. You've got to get Christians on your side to understand that it's not those savages in Africa, that it's Mr. Templesman in Harvard. And for example, the Harvard University a few years ago, you remember the movie Blood Diamonds?
Yeah.
Another very racist movie. Hollywood is completely connected to the Pentagon. And this stuff may look like they're telling the truth, and that there's some truth in it, but it's meant to be racist and to sell these stereotypes and to convince the American people that Africa is a very difficult place. It's always been difficult. We can't help Africa, but we're going to try as best we can, which is nonsense. It's complete nonsense. So when Blood Diamond came out, at the same time, Harvard University was involved in something called the Kimberley process.
Yeah.
And the Kimberley process was supposedly to clean up the Blood Diamond story, to clean up blood diamonds in Africa, to stop conflict diamonds from coming out of Africa. Nothing could be further from the truth, because the people that organized the Kimberley process are at Harvard. And right across the river, if you know Harvard, it's a big campus, and on one side you've got the people that organized the Kimberley process at the Kennedy School of Government, and on the other side you've got Mr. Templesman on the board of the Harvard AIDS Institute, which is connected to the Pentagon. And as I said, Mr. Templesman doesn't care about African people. He doesn't care about AIDS. This is another front, because the entire AIDS, HIV story is also about exploiting people of Congo. How? What they've done is they've said, people come to a clinic run by usually a bunch of white folks, or some big corporation, like Pfizer Corporation, which is connected to the Bush family. Pfizer runs this clinic, or they set up, or they fund a clinic through CARE or through UNICEF. And the Congolese people who are sick show up at the clinic, and they've got tuberculosis, and they've got malaria, or they've got river blindness, or they've got diarrhea, or they've got just simple malnutrition. And the doctor says, you have AIDS. It's not true. But as long as they can continue to produce more and more numbers of people sick from AIDS, they can continue to get more and more money from the AIDS organizations. This is how it works. And what you've got is a person who's got tuberculosis suddenly has been diagnosed as having AIDS. And if they go back to their family and say, I've got AIDS, sometimes their family is going to push them away. And sometimes their village is going to push them away. So it's creating a major problem, because people are being pushed out of their own families when all they have is malaria. And we can treat malaria. You understand what I'm saying? Of course, some people do have what would be diagnosed in the United States as legitimately as AIDS, but most of them have something else that has caused their immune system with malaria and river blindness and no nutrients because they have malnutrition. It's caused their immune system to collapse. And so it's easy for a doctor to say, well, you have AIDS. And we go back to Mr. Templesman on the board of the Harvard AIDS Institute. And we ask, what is really going on here? So if you want to go after the problem in the Congo, you go after Mr. Templesman. You don't go after anybody else. Let's go after one man. One man.
Only one.
Let's go after one man. And the evidence against Mr. Templesman is very significant, because he's been involved in the Congo since 1959. And his networks have been involved. There's people in Kinshasa. You can go and talk to them. And they're supposedly creating clean diamonds. And you immediately bring up, well, what do you think about Mr. Templesman? And you find out, well, actually, they work with Mr. Templesman. And suddenly, they don't want to talk to you, and they get angry. Because who are they? They're trying to feed their families, too. Because the system is so corrupt, and the suffering is so extreme in the Congo, that at some point, it becomes every man for himself. And every woman for her children.